This episode of the Having It All podcast is sponsored by me, Matthew Bivens, and I absolutely love helping people launch and grow podcasts. My background is in digital marketing, and I'll be honest, when I was first presented with the idea of starting a podcast to grow my brand, I completely shut it down. I thought it was going to be too expensive, too time-consuming, and pull me away from what I really wanted to focus on in my business. But you know what? Shortly after launching the Digital Marketing Guy podcast, I realized that I could have not been more wrong. Podcasting quickly became my favorite and most effective way of reaching a global audience, growing my brand authority, and attracting my ideal client. Today, after successfully launching, growing, and monetizing 3 different podcasts, I help businesses and entrepreneurs do the same. To learn more about how I can help you break into podcasting, go to matthewbivens.com/podcast. Again, that's matthewbivens.com/podcast. Welcome to the Having It All podcast, the show about what it takes to live an abundant, loving life. My name is Matthew Bivens, and each week I'm helping you get out of your head so that you can truly have it all. Let's do it. What's going on, everybody? Matthew Bivens here. This is the Having It All podcast, and I am out of the studio today. You probably hear some background noises. It's because I'm going for a walk. I'm actually walking to the movie theater right now to go check out the new Aliens movie. Sarah has taken baby Maya to North Carolina to go hang out with some of her girlfriends, and that means Dad has the whole weekend to himself. But we are a one-car family, so it also means that my mode of transportation are my own 2 feet. Hence the walking, which I have 0 problems with. I love getting outside. It's a beautiful day right now. And I thought, what better way to take advantage of this time than to share some thoughts I had with you. So right now, like I said, I'm going to take myself out on a date. And that's something that I started doing years ago after a 4-year relationship I was in ended pretty abruptly. I felt incredibly lost. I felt like I did not really understand and know who I was and what I was about and what I liked. I was so caught up in that relationship that, I think you can probably relate. You just lose sort of that perspective. So one of the things that I did very intentionally shortly after was started to take myself out on dates and started to do things that I initially felt uncomfortable doing. So for me, that was going to see a movie alone, and that was going out to dinner alone, or going to eat at a restaurant alone. And now, fast forward about, 6-7 years later, those are a couple of my favorite, absolutely favorite activities. So as I'm walking right now to the movie, and I'm walking up a huge hill, so I'm a little bit out of breath. We've got a few very, very big hills in my neighborhood. But as I'm walking to this movie, it just got me thinking about self-love. And, I've been engaged in different personal development books and podcasts and videos and things like that for a long time. And if you have been into this stuff as well, then I know that you've heard people talking about self-love. And they say how important it is to love on yourself. And that's one way to help get yourself out of feeling funky, get yourself out of your head and really to honor and value yourself is by self-love. And they're not wrong. I think they're absolutely right. But one of the things that I don't really hear are concrete ways you can do that and really tangible things you can take away to understand what self-love truly is. Because, self-love is going to the gym, taking care of your body, taking care of your fitness. It is buying yourself a new outfit, or in my case, taking myself out on a date. But it's deeper than that. And so what I want to share are some insights that I've had into the true depth of self-love, what it can really mean. And when you tap into this, when you really can wrap your mind around this concept of self-love, it shifts a whole lot. So I did not come up with this concept. Actually, my mentor, Day Adioba, we were on a men's retreat weekend with a number of other men, and we're talking about this idea of loving on yourself, but the context was slightly different. We were talking about it in terms of being trustworthy and worthy of that trust for yourself. So where I want to go with this is share this idea that self-love has everything to do with keeping your personal standards. Keeping your standards. Because when you do that, when you set a standard for yourself, whether it's a standard for your relationships, a standard for your health, a standard for your finances, a standard for your spirituality, a standard for your friendships, when you set that standard and then you keep it, what you are effectively doing is communicating that you are worth it, that you are worthy, that you are valuable. When you set that standard for yourself and you don't keep it and you break it, well, you're doing the very opposite. You are telling yourself that you are not worthy. And that right there, subconsciously, in your mind, in your heart, you may not consciously be aware of it, but subconsciously, that is a huge hit to your self-love and to your self-worth when you do not withhold and uphold your own personal standards. So, here's a really simple example of that, and it has to do with relationships. A lot of us will talk about the types of partners that we wish to have. We'll talk about the standards that we have within our relationships. We might share them with our friends. We might share them with our current partner. We might share them in a session with a counselor or therapist. So we will set this sort of standard, and the standard might be, I want somebody who's going to treat me well and respect me, and I want somebody who is into growing themselves intellectually and spiritually and emotionally. And we set these standards, and then what happens is we meet someone and we find all these things about them and we become attracted to them. We become attracted to their body. We become attracted to their conversation, but they don't meet our standard. And so what do? You're stuck in this place where you have this attraction to this person and you want to be with them. You want to spend your time with them. You want to give your time to them, but they don't meet that standard that you set for yourself. Oftentimes what we do in that case, we change our standard. We change our standard, or we create reasons why this person can skirt around the standards. What do you think that does to your self-love, to your self-worth? It completely destroys it, diminishes it in your eyes. Again, it may not be conscious, but your spirit knows it, your heart knows it. That you set a standard for yourself and you said, you know what? I'm not worthy of that standard. So I'm going to go ahead and back off of it. And I'm going to let this person into my life and give this person my time. Doing that again and again and again and again creates this story that we are not enough, that we are not worth it, that we are not worthy. We are not worthy of love. We are not worthy of financial abundance. We are not worthy of true friendships. That's what that does. And that's why making standards for yourself and holding those standards, no matter what, in my opinion, is one of the most powerful forms of self-love. And it's something that I had not heard about. I had not heard about this idea of standards and self-love until I went on this men's retreat. And that's why I want to share that with you today, because you may not have heard of it as either. Maybe you were like me, and when you hear things about self-love, when you hear people talk about it, you're just sort of like, yeah, I know that taking care of myself is self-love. I understand that going to the gym, I understand that eating well is self-love. I get it. But it doesn't connect. Those things don't connect, because you can always make an excuse why you're not going to go to the gym. Does that mean you don't love yourself? Not necessarily. But if you set a standard of health for yourself and you say, I want to be at this standard of health on average, that's when you can say, okay, am I upholding my standard, or am I backing away from my standard and changing it? So that's something for you all to marinate on. I am approaching a busy road, so this is going to wrap up today's conversation, today's episode. And I want to hear your thoughts about self-love. I want to hear what you think about standards and self-love, and I want to hear about some of the things that you do to show love for yourself. Me, you already know my example. I take myself out on dates. I take myself out to movies. I want to hear what yours are. So shoot me an email. My email address, direct email address is mattcbivens@gmail.com. I appreciate everyone who has emailed me in the past week. You all are amazing. I love you. I appreciate you. And with that, my name is Matthew Bivens, and here is to you having it all.